On the 4th of August 1914, Britain declared war on Germany. Britain, like several other countries, became involved in the war, known at the time as the Great War, because of links by treaty to other countries. In Britain's case, they were responding to a request for help from Belgium, who had been attacked by a German army on its way to invade France. Another concern of the British government, who had been worried for some time about the growing industrial and military strength of Germany, was the fact that if she occupied both France and Belgium, she would be in a position to launch an attack on Britain from the Channel ports. To commemorate the first centennial of the outbreak of this war, which we now know as the First World War, Tyldesley Creative Writers evolved the idea of making a film which could be shown in the library throughout the anniversary years of the war. All members of the group were invited to contribute to the production of the film through various writing media, stories, poems, monologues, some of which would be factually based and others fiction. It is impossible for us to cover the events of the whole war in this film, so we have chosen to concentrate mainly on events in Britain and on the Western Front, from August 1914 until the signing of the armistice on the 11th of November 1918. Whilst also including some important events from other arenas of the war. We hope you will find our film both entertaining and informative. How the First World War began. When the Austro-Hungarian Empire declared war on Serbia on the 28th of July 1914, it was the culmination of over 100 years of hostility between the two countries. The origins of their mutual hatred lay in Austria's claim that Serbia was part of its empire, and in the many differences between the peoples of the two countries in language, politics and religion. The signing of a treaty in 1874 had done nothing to ease the tension. In 1908, Austria annexed Bosnia, even further enraging the Serbians, who had their own claim on the territory and were now unable to use Bosnia for the purposes of exporting their produce, especially pork, to France via the Adriatic Sea. On the 28th of June 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, nephew and heir to the Austrian Emperor Franz Joseph I, arrived in the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo to inspect the army, a visit he had been advised not to make. A few hours after his arrival, both he and wife Sophie were shot and killed by a Bosnian of Serbian descent, Gavrilo Princip. Princip was a member of the Black Hand Gang, one of a number of dissident groups which had been set up by Serbian military officers. 1 month later, on the 28th of July, Austria, having asked its allies Germany for support, declared war on Serbia. Serbia's response was to ask its allies Russia for support. On the 1st of August, Germany declared war on Russia. Once Russia prepared for war, Germany, realising it would be facing a war on two fronts, with Russia on its eastern border and France, Russia's ally, on its western border, fell back on a war plan known as the Schlieffen Plan. This had been formulated in 1902 in anticipation of war with France. Germany anticipated being able to take control of Paris within a 6-week period, leaving them then able to concentrate on fighting Russia, who they expected to be slow to mobilise. However, the plan called for them to invade France by going through neutral Belgium. On the 3rd of August, Germany declared war on France, and the following day France responded by its own declaration of war against Germany. Germany then bombed Lille and invaded Belgium. On the 4th of August 1914, Britain, one of the signatories of the Treaty of London, responded to Belgium's plea for help and declared war on Germany. Germany had not believed she would honour her obligations under the Treaty of London, which they called a scrap of paper.
Jolly good luck to the girl who loves the soldier. Girls, have you been there? You know, we military men always do our duty everywhere. Jolly good luck to the girl who loves a soldier. Real good boys are we. Girls, if you'd like to love a soldier, you can all love me. Girls, if you'd like to love a soldier, you can all love me. I'm Miss Tilly. I'm a music hall artiste. I've been touring the halls now for well over 40 years. I usually travel with my husband and our family, but I'm mainly based in London. I'm what you call a male impersonator. That means when I'm on stage I sing and act like a man. I do this because the songs they write for men these days are far more interesting and vibrant than the ones they write for the ladies. Anyway, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had a bit of an idea. I thought, while we're in a war, why don't we recruit young men on stage? Because my shows are always packed with young men and ladies, and it's a good way of getting them all together. Well, the first time we did this, I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe my eyes. All these young men came running on stage. They were so enthusiastic. I think they wanted to show off in front of their sweethearts. There were just 1 or 2 who wouldn't sign up. We call them cowards. But generally, most of the young boys are so eager. They'll shine in this conflict. Anyway, once they've all signed on, I get them to march round. I've contacted my fellow artists Mary Lloyd and Harry Lauder, and I believe they do just the same as me, except Harry Lauder gives 10 shillings to the first boy who comes on stage. I don't do that. But as I said, I'll get them all to come on and march round, and we all have a lovely evening. They'll all shine in this conflict. Here's the song we sing. Thank you, Maestro. Oh, it's all right. It's all right now. No need to worry anymore. We saw the army wasn't strong. Everything was wrong till the day we came along, and then the band played. We all hurrayed. The guns fired a salvo of delight. We joined the army yesterday. Now the army of today's all right. We joined the army yesterday. Now the army of today's all right.
Your country needs you, Lord Kitchener said. So I knew that I had to do my bit, to join up to serve my country. So I stood there in the queue with hundreds of other men all wanting to do the right thing. It all seemed so exciting, and we knew that we wouldn't be away for long. We had to do our training first then. It'll all be over by Christmas, they told us, so, why not? I have to report back at 6 o'clock on Saturday. My parents were very proud of me and told me so. Well, at least I think they were. My mum went a bit quiet. Grace, my sweetheart, was really sad when I told her, but I'm sure that in time she'll be proud too. I do love her so much, and I know that I'm going to miss her, but it won't be for long. Then we'll have the rest of our lives to spend together. I'm going to ask her to marry me before I go off to fight the Hun. Please, God, that she says yes. She's the loveliest girl that I know, and I just want her to be mine.
Met our Tommy, haven't you? A good lad. He's my youngest, and I know you shouldn't have any favourites, but he's mine. The older lads both worked down the pit, and I could have cried when John, that's my husband, said that that he expected our Tommy to follow suit. If it's good enough for my dad, and my dad before him, it's darn well good enough for our Tommy, he said. That's what he told Tommy's teacher when he came round to tell us how clever our Tommy was, and that he would be wasted down the pit. I liked his teacher. He said our Tommy was clever, and he was also one of the faster runners he'd ever come across. He could have a great career if he put his mind to it. We argued after a lot after that, me and John, over our Tommy. He shares his birthday with me, you know. 21 he is next. I always tell him it was the best birthday present I'd ever got. And he's probably told you that he's joined up. I really don't want him to go, but what can I do? If I say anything, he'll think I'm unpatriotic. He said it will be an adventure and better going down the pit every day. And he said, and this was a shock. Go out and buy yourself a hat, mother. I'm going to ask Grace to marry me.
As well as encouraging men to join the army, music halls were responsible for the introduction of many songs, both patriotic and anti-German. At a time when many homes had a piano and a pianist, the songs from the music halls soon became very popular. Oh, It's a Lovely War and Ira Novello's Keep the Home Fires Burning were just two of the many songs that boosted the morale of the forces and civilians. The government also considered it necessary to censor newspapers and other publications, and the Press Bureau was established on the 7th of August. In the past, the government had had a voluntary agreement with the press concerning censorship, but coming to realise that the war was going to be on a greater scale than first believed, were concerned about information being leaked to the enemy, while at the same time wanting to use newspapers for war propaganda. Most newspapers cooperated with censorship, but the pamphlets and publications of pacifist and other groups, such as anarchists and Marxists were opposed to the war, were difficult to control. The government struggled throughout the war to deal with them, reluctant to be accused of preventing freedom of speech. Supporters of the war did not share these views, and pro-war mobs frequently disrupted pacifist meetings. On the 8th of August, the Defence of the Realm Act was passed, allowing the government many powers not considered necessary in peacetime. For example, the banning of bonfires, of feeding wild animals, and the restriction of pub opening hours. Soldiers' letters home had to be censored. One unresolved difficulty for the British government at the start of the war was the question of Home Rule for Ireland. The introduction of the Third Home Rule Bill in 1912 had met with resistance from Ulster Unionists, and they had set up a paramilitary force, the Ulster Volunteers. The response of the Irish nationalists was to set up their own force, which they called the Irish Volunteers. When Britain declared war on Germany in August, Ireland was on the verge of civil war. The government's efforts to solve the problems of Ireland resulted in the Government of Ireland Act, granting Home Rule to Ireland, which was given royal assent on the 15th of September. 2 days later, the leader of the Irish Parliamentary Party, John Redmond, called for members of the Irish Allied Volunteers to enlist the National Volunteers as part of the British Army. Altogether, 206,000 Irishmen served as volunteers with the British Army. In early November, Karl Hans Lodi, a German national, was arrested in Edinburgh for spying. He had volunteered as a spy in May 1914 and, travelling on an American passport, had been sent to Edinburgh to spy on the naval bases on the Firth of Forth. His very first message was intercepted through MI5's routine monitoring of messages and letters sent overseas. He was not arrested immediately because many of his messages contained rumours which would alarm the Germans. For example, saying that Russian soldiers had landed in Scotland. However, he then travelled to Dublin, and it was when he started sending information from there which would be useful to the Germans, such as the numbers and descriptions of ships he had seen, that the decision was made to arrest him. He was tried in public for war treason and sentenced to be executed. Taken to the Tower of London, he was shot on the 6th of November 1914, the first of 11 spies to be executed there during World War I. During his trial, Lodi had earned much admiration by proving himself to be both honourable and a patriot. In a last letter to relatives he wrote, "I have trusted in God and He has decided. My hour has come and I must start on the journey through the dark. Like so many of my comrades in this terrible war of nations, may my life be offered as a humble offering on the altar of the fatherland." In France and Belgium, 11 million civilians were suffering from the effects of German occupation, but the waters surrounding Britain had kept the country free from invasion for centuries. However, in December 1914, war came to Britain. On the 16th, the east coast towns of Hartlepool, Whitby and Scarborough were bombarded by German battleships, with the loss of 137 civilian lives, including a 14-month-old child. "Child killers," screamed the newspapers, and the attack led to more volunteers for the army. A few days later, on Christmas Eve, Dover, which had been made a particular target of the Germans, with the offer of a prize to the first pilot to bomb her, became the recipient of the first bomb to be dropped in Britain. The country, as it prepared to enter the new year, found itself still at war.
I've done it.
You've done what, Norman? What have you been up to again? Tell you the truth, I'd really rather not know.
Yes.
No, I'll not guess. You're like a little child sometimes, Norman. It's time you grew up.
Oh, but I will. I shall have to now, won't I?
Yes, you will. And about time too. You can't rely on me forever. It's time you ventured into the world of work.
There is no work round here, Mother. How many times? I've been to that pit bro and asked for women's work. Millions of times. I've even said I'll pull the coals like the horses do, as good as them. But there's nothing, there's nought.
Well, look elsewhere then. Marshall was saying they're taking on at Bleachworks on Leyland Road, what with all men leaving. Try there!
Don't worry, it's all sorted, and you will be proud of me.
Just get a job then. Put some bread on the table. That's all I ask. My knuckles are red raw, what with all washing I take in, and not to mention my back and my arthritis is killing me. Bending over that tub with scrubbing board. I'm wore out, Norman, and you don't help, you're a liability.
I'll be putting a leg of lamb on that table soon, and, surprise, I'm going to take you to the Palais Theatre. We can sit in the gods, Mother.
Sit in the gods? You can sit on your own. Do I look like a fallen woman? I won't be going to any theatre sitting with the harlots. Your dad would turn in his grave.
I'd like to do something for you, something nice. Shall I go and get that goose fat and massage it into your nail-twisted knuckles?
Beggar off, Norman. I can take care of myself. Just get off your backside and bring some money in. There's nothing in larder. It's empty.
There's something in. There's eggs. I think there's 8 eggs in there. Then chickens are belting leaves.
Well, go and see Fred Longsworth and tell him to ring Gertrude's neck and we can have a roast dinner on Sunday. It's time we have a treat.
No, not Gertrude, Mother. I love Gertrude.
She's a chicken, Norman, and she's getting old. Enough said. Do it.
We can have toasted egg. You know, you like that, don't you, Mother?
I want a roast chicken, so sort it out. You need to toughen up, my laddie.
Hey mother, I saw a poster today and it said, Britain needs you. And it's Lord Kitchener who said it.
See the poster?
Yeah.
It's war, Norman.
I know.
We have gone to
I know.
war against Germany. You do know that, don't you, Norman?
Of course I do. What do you take me for, some kind of nitwit?
Well, sometimes I wonder where your mind is and what you're thinking.
That poster certainly gave me food for thought.
Talking of food, don't forget the chicken needs culling.
First, I've got to tell you something. It's a good job you sat down. Are you comfy there, mother?
I'm all ears. Come on, surprise me. You usually do with your barmy ideas.
And when I saw that poster, it seemed like the soldier on it was pointing straight at me, straight at Norman Baggs. It was like a Damascus moment. Remember when Vickers said it's like when you've seen the light?
You're waffling on again. Get to the point. Are you joining the priesthood? Well, why am I not surprised?
No, I'm not joining the priesthood, but I have heard the call, and I have been called.
And who is calling?
Kitchener, that's who. He needs me to protect Great Britain. He needs me to fight tooth and nail. He needs me to be brave. So, I'm going to fight for king and country. I will be brave, mother.
And tell me, how are you proposing to kill the Germans if you can't kill a chicken?
It's not the same, mother. I love Gertrude. Right, I've said it. I love the way she smiles at me when she clucks.
And what about when the Germans smile at you? What will you do then, Norman? You're not capable of war. Leave it to the men.
Right, I'll prove it. Just you wait and see.
Where are you going? You taking leave of your senses. Get back here.
Oh yeah, one chicken dinner. I've done it. Satisfied, are you? Let me repeat this, mother. I am going to war. What's the matter? What are you shaking for, mother? Let me say this one last time. I, Norman Baggs, your son, have enlisted.
In 1914, Britain had the largest navy in the world. It was the envy of the German Kaiser Wilhelm II, cousin of King George V, and was relied on to support the large British Empire, which was also the envy of the Kaiser. Unlike France, Germany and Russia, which had large standing armies, Britain did not use conscription. Both the navy and the army were serviced by volunteers, and the regular army was mostly based overseas and used either to protect or to expand the empire or to stop other countries' expansion plans. One example is the British involvement in the Crimean War in the 1850s, which succeeded in preventing Russia from gaining control of part of the Ottoman Empire. At the end of the 19th century, Britain's army had been fighting in South Africa in the Boer Wars, and it was the Second Boer War and the lessons learned from the army's struggle to defeat the Boers which brought about both a change of British overseas policy and a reform of the army. This war was also a factor in Germany's plans for any future war, as it led them to believe that Britain was no longer able to control her empire. Abandoning its policy of isolationism, Britain started to look for allies. A treaty was signed with Japan in 1902 with the hope that it would help protect British interests in the Far East, and an Entente Cordiale agreement was made with France in April 1904. A later addition to this agreement permitted Britain to send an army to France if necessary. The British Army reforms included the formation of an expeditionary force, trained for use in a major war, with the existing reserves being expanded to provide it with extra men when needed. It was part of this force, the British Expeditionary Force, the BEF, numbering 100,000 men,
which was sent to France in early August. The Royal Flying Corps, formed in 1912 with the aim of using both aircraft and balloons for observation and reconnaissance, supported both the Army and the Navy. The Schieffelin Plan met its first setback when the British Expeditionary Force succeeded in delaying the Germans at Mons in Belgium and then made an orderly retreat. Despite this, by early September the German army was 30 miles away from Paris. The French and the British armies desperately fought to hold them back at the River Marne, and their success forced the Germans to abandon their plans to capture the French capital. With the Russian army mobilising faster than anticipated, the Germans were now forced to fight a war on both their western and eastern fronts. The First Battle of Marne in France in early September involved over 2 million soldiers and left 500,000 dead or wounded, including 13,000 British. 3 days later, a battle at Le Cateau caused the loss of just under 8,000 men, including 2,600 taken prisoner. While most of the casualties at Marne had been caused by rifle fire, tactics changed quickly, and at Le Tour both sides used artillery. The retreat of the BEF was covered by French cavalry, providing a mix of old and new warfare, but the high number of deaths were proving that the romantic war and easy victory anticipated by the eager volunteers was far from reality. It was these early huge losses that inspired the poet Laurence Binyon to write his poem For the Fallen. First published in the Times in September 1916, it's the fourth verse from this poem, the Ode of Remembrance, that is read out at remembrance services. The end of October saw the First Battle of Ypres, a medieval town in Belgium that has suffered severe sieges in its history because it was strategically placed for access to the English Channel. Holding the town and thus controlling the Channel ports was essential for both the Allies and the Germans. The battle ended on November 22nd with an Allied victory. This battle also saw the end of what later became known as the Race to the Sea. Winter was setting in. There was nowhere else for the armies to go. It was the end of an offensive warfare on the Western Front and the start of defensive operations that continued until the spring of 1918. The German army had been digging trenches since the earlier battles of the war, so they could not be forced to retreat. The Allied armies countered by digging their own trenches. By the end of December 1914, trenches spread from the Channel coast to neutral Switzerland, making any military offensive almost impossible. The huge losses that had been suffered by the BEF since August meant that replacements were coming from the ranks of newly trained volunteers, along with men from the Indian Army and the Territorials. The British Expeditionary Force, as originally conceived, no longer existed. On the 20th of December 1914, German troops entered No Man's Land, the area that separated the British trenches from the German trenches. They were to rescue some wounded British soldiers. British soldiers joined them, and the bodies of dead soldiers of both sides were recovered and buried. There were reports of singing from both sides of the trenches, with German soldiers bringing Christmas trees to their front line. Soldiers' letters home tell of football matches taking place between the men of the two armies. While firing was still going on in some parts of the line, local truces were being agreed in others. When news of the unofficial truce reached senior British officers, they ordered that the soldiers who had taken part should be disciplined, but the punishment was never carried out.
Monday, 12th of October 1914. My dearest Grace, I've arrived here safely. I'm billeted with 2 officers at the home of Mrs. Dorcas, but apparently this will be only until the huts at the camp are ready for use. Later on the first afternoon we went out to the parade ground, but it was really strange because the men were appearing from all directions, such a crowd. A bugle sounded at 2 p.m. and we went into 4 companies, A, B, C and D. We spent the afternoon sorting ourselves out, finding out who each other was and what we were expected to do as a private soldier. There is such a feeling of comradeship and hope, but we are all proud men who can't wait to do our duty for king and country. I do miss you so much already, my dearest Grace. I miss seeing your lovely smile that so brightens my day. Hopefully it won't be all that long before I see you again. Keep strong. I promise I'll take care of myself and come back to you. Nothing pleased me more than when you accepted my proposal and agreed to be my wife. My dear one, I love you so much and will write to you again very soon. Take care of yourself. With much love, Tommy.
Dearest Tommy, thank you for your letter. It was so good to hear from you, and I know that you're well. I hope that the training was not too arduous, and that you will soon be fully fledged private soldier. I'm so proud of you. It's a very brave thing that you're doing, along with all those other hundreds of men. I'm working hard at the hospital, though nothing unusual has happened. Today was rather worrying though, as a matron suddenly appeared on the ward to make an inspection. We were all very nervous and she scrutinised absolutely everything. Fortunately, she was mainly satisfied with the running of the ward. The sister was a bit put out when she criticised some of the bed making, but it was easily sorted. I do miss you, my darling Tommy. My thoughts often wander to you and what you're doing. I do pray every night that you will be safe. When you asked me to marry you, I was thrilled, and I cannot wait to be your wife. I just know that we are going to be so happy together for the rest of our lives. Mother is helping me find a suitable dress and a hat for the wedding, and I've asked Tilly to be my bridesmaid. You will need to decide who's going to be your best man. Hopefully we will fix a date soon, and of course it would depend on how long you're away. But this dreadful trouble will be over before Christmas, and then hopefully we can have a Christmas wedding. What do you think? Take care, my darling. I look forward to receiving your next letter. May God be with you. With fondest love, Grace.